Did you know a goat can climb a vertical wall and a sheep can die just from following the herd? It might sound exaggerated, but it's not. Today, on Wild Animal World, we're putting head-to-head two countryside icons that many people confuse, but that are actually complete opposites. Goat versus sheep. Which one is smarter? Which one is more useful? And which one has the strangest eyes in the entire animal kingdom? Subscribe and stay to the end, because you're about to enter a showdown that will change the way you see these animals forever. First off, when most people talk about sheep, they're almost always referring to the domesticated kind, those soft woolly puffballs we see on farms, which scientists call Ovis aries. Note, not all sheep are domesticated. In reality, the term sheep refers to any species within the genus Ovis, which is part of the large Bovidae family. And here's where it gets interesting. There are 7 different species of sheep in the world. Only 1 is domesticated. The other 6 are wild. Some amazing examples: the Asian urial, Ovis vignae; the Dall sheep of North America, Ovis dalli; the giant argali, Ovis ammon; the largest wild sheep on the planet, the Rocky Mountain bighorn, Ovis canadensis, with horns that look like natural works of art. All wild sheep species come from the Northern Hemisphere. From the frozen mountains of Central Asia to the rockiest regions of North America, wild sheep have evolved to thrive in extreme environments. And even though they live in very different places, they all share some surprising traits. For example, the terminology. Females are simply called sheep. Adult males, if they've got everything in place, are known as rams. The young, regardless of sex, are called lambs. And if a male has been castrated, he's called a wether. And what do you call them when they're in a group? A flock, a herd, or a crowd? Yes, that's how social they can be. Oh, and in case you were wondering, the plural of sheep is still sheep. No sheeps in technical zoological terms. Now let's talk about the physical side. Wild sheep tend to be smaller than other members of their family, the bovids. But there are exceptions. The smallest sheep in the world is Ovis vignae blandfordi, which lives in Central Asia and the Middle East. It barely reaches 90 centimeters at the shoulder, about 2.9 feet, and it weighs at most around 50 kilos, 110 pounds. But on the other hand, we've got a true giant, the argali, Ovis ammon. It can measure between 1.2 and 2 meters in length. Females reach 100 kilos, and rams have been reported at up to 356 kilos, 785 pounds. And as a general rule, males of all sheep species are noticeably larger than females. In domestic sheep, the difference can also be very pronounced depending on the breed. In general, males of any sheep breed tend to be larger than females of the same breed. But we're not just talking about size here. All sheep are specialized herbivores, and their diet is based mainly on grasses. Even so, they don't limit themselves to lawn-type grass. They also supplement their meals with leaves, herbs, and even lichens in extreme environments. And here's one of their evolutionary superpowers. Sheep are ruminants. That means they have a stomach divided into 4 chambers, engineered to extract the maximum nutritional value from every bite. How do they do it? They chew, they swallow, they regurgitate, and they chew again. Yes, it's a little gross, but incredibly efficient. This ruminating process lets them digest very tough plant material that other animals simply couldn't make use of. And there's more. Thanks to their ultra-efficient digestion and their ability to retain water, sheep can survive, and even thrive, in some of the toughest, most resource-scarce environments on Earth. From deserts to arid mountains, these creatures have developed a biology worthy of admiration. Most of the world's sheep live in the Northern Hemisphere, where winters can be harsh, long, and freezing. And that's why both in the wild and in domestication, their coat is a vital survival tool. The domestic sheep we see today, with those bodies covered in thick wool, don't look like that by chance. They've been bred for centuries to have that dense fleece that protects them from the cold and allows them to endure sub-zero temperatures, but not all sheep look the same. In nature, wild sheep have a more functional and adaptable coat. It's made up of 2 layers, an outer layer with longer, coarser hair, and an inner layer of short, soft, woolly fluff. The result? A sort of 2-level coat that shields them from wind, snow, and moisture. During winter, the coat grows longer and thicker, but when spring arrives, they start to shed. They drop the excess hair to handle the heat and conserve energy. And now let's move to a feature that impresses everyone: the horns. In many wild species, both males and females have horns, and some are enormous. For example, the famous bighorn sheep, yes, that's its real common name, can have horns that weigh as much as the rest of its skeleton. Imagine carrying that on your head all day. But with domestic sheep, the story is different. The presence of horns is highly variable. Some breeds have them in both sexes, others only in males, the rams, and many breeds don't have horns at all. It all depends on the breed and on the genetic selection carried out by humans over generations. Also, all sheep, whether wild or domestic, are extremely alert. Their senses are finely tuned. The reason? They're prey. When they detect a threat, they don't attack, they don't hide, they run. And almost always they head for higher ground because they instinctively know that from there they can see better and gain the advantage. Sheep aren't just good walkers. They're true experts at climbing hills and mountains. That skill isn't a coincidence. It comes from centuries, even millennia, of adaptation to steep, rugged terrain. And although at first glance they might seem like simple animals, they actually have a very interesting communication system. Did you know they communicate with each other using body language and sounds? That famous baa we all recognize, and that little ones simply call a bleat, isn't just a cute noise. It's a real form of communication that changes depending on the situation, age, and even emotional state. Now, if you thought the relationship between humans and sheep is recent, you're about to be surprised. Long before farms, barns, or woven wool existed, sheep were already part of human life. They were game animals, a source of meat, hide, and bones that our ancestors used as tools, weapons, and even ornaments. But something changed. Between 11,000 and 9,000 BC, somewhere in what we now know as Mesopotamia, humans took a key step in history. They began to domesticate sheep. From that moment, sheep went from being wild prey to becoming allies in human development. Their wool helped create the first garments. Their meat helped people survive harsh winters. And their bones were used to make tools that changed the course of our evolution. And look how far we've come. Today, there are more than 200 breeds of sheep in the world, from small, hardy mountain breeds to the woolly sheep raised solely for their valuable coats. But the impact of sheep doesn't stop at the kitchen or the textile industry. They've left a deep mark on human culture. From early religious texts to ancient mythologies, the sheep has symbolized. Innocence, virtue, sacrifice. Rams, on the other hand, stand for very different things. Strength, masculinity. Fighting spirit. Lambs, by contrast, evoke ideas like loyalty, purity, selflessness. And in some cultures, the mother sheep even symbolizes fertility or the maternal instinct. In modern culture, we also use sheep as a metaphor. You've surely heard the phrase, "That person is like a sheep." It refers to someone who follows the crowd without questioning anything, without thinking for themselves. So it's not just a farm animal. The sheep shows up in our religions, our metaphors, our stories, and even in everyday language. But now it's time to talk about its eternal rebel cousin, the goat. Those animals many people think are similar to sheep, but that hide fascinating secrets. From a taxonomic point of view, goats and sheep are like first cousins. Both belong to the family Bovidae and the subfamily Caprinae, which means they are ruminants, they have cloven hooves, and they share a common evolutionary past. But heads up, this is where things get interesting. These days, when someone says goat, unless they're talking about Lionel Messi or Michael Jordan, they're not referring to the greatest of all time. They mean the domestic goat, the farm animal that has accompanied humans for millennia. Its scientific name is Capra hircus, but not all goats are domestic. The genus Capra includes 9 wild species, each with unique traits. And these are the real goats, the ones that scale cliffs, live among impossible mountains, and have developed extreme behaviors to survive. So if you thought a goat was just the skinny, crazy version of a sheep, get ready, because you're about to discover why they're true masters of balance and adaptation. The genus Capra, of which the domestic goat is a member, also includes 9 other wild species, all known as mountain goats or ibex, depending on the region. Some of the most fascinating are the Iberian ibex, Capra pyrenaica, which inhabits Spain's mountain ranges, the alpine ibex, Capra ibex, with horns curved like war sabers, the wild goat, Capra aegagrus, the direct ancestor of our domestic goats, the East Caucasian tur, Capra cylindricornis, with spiral-shaped horns, and the imposing markhor, Capra falconeri, Pakistan's national symbol and a living legend of the mountains. All these species, just like wild sheep, are native to the Northern Hemisphere. And here's a quick visual glossary. Males are known as bucks or billy goats. Females are called does or nanny goats. And the young, just like in sheep, are called kids. Although goats and sheep share a similar overall size, they're both small members of the bovid group. Goats tend to be lighter, leaner, and more muscular. The largest wild goat is the Siberian ibex, Capra sibirica, which can reach 290 pounds in weight and measure 1.10 meters at the shoulder. On the other hand, the smallest is the Nubian ibex, which barely reaches 75 kilograms in adulthood. But what they all have in common is something crucial. They are incredibly resilient animals. Adapted to live in rocky, dry, extreme environments, these goats aren't afraid of the abyss. They climb crags as if they were part of the landscape, using their hooves with surgical precision. While sheep seek safety in numbers, goats bet on individuality, altitude, and extreme agility. They're elite climbers, experts at conquering hills and mountains with an ease that feels like magic. The reason? From high up, they can watch their surroundings, spot threats, and escape before becoming dinner. Their predators include wolves, wild cats, bears, and even birds of prey like eagles. But unlike sheep-born grazers, goats don't just graze on grass. No, sir. They're true botanical explorers. They feed on shrubs, low-hanging tree leaves, twigs. And yes, some grass too. All of this makes them opportunistic herbivores with a much more varied and flexible menu. And how do they manage to digest so many different things? Thanks to their powerful digestive system, a stomach with 4 chambers. And the habit of ruminating, yes, that process of chewing the food again to squeeze out every drop of nutrition. That gives them a massive advantage in places where other animals simply couldn't survive. Where there's little water and almost nothing to eat, the goat keeps going, agile and defiant. They're experts at conserving water. How do they do it? Their bodies are super efficient at extracting moisture from the foods they eat, and they lose very little water through other means. That's why they can survive and even thrive in deserts and areas where water is scarce, places that would push many other animals to the brink. As prey animals, goats are equipped with senses tuned like radar. Sharp vision to detect the slightest movement, sensitive hearing to pick up distant sounds, a sense of smell that alerts them to the smallest danger. And of course, they have their own language. Their vocalization is a kind of bleat. Although honestly, it sounds more like meh than the classic baa of sheep. And speaking of visual signals, goats are also distinguished by their horns and beards. Both males and females can have them, but in males, they're much more striking. The male markhor, for example, sports horns that can measure up to 63 inches long, a true natural masterpiece. And their beards, they're the most extravagant and longest among wild goats, almost like a wizard's beard. Many goat species that live in the coldest parts of the planet sport a thick, abundant coat. This coat isn't static. It follows a seasonal cycle of growth and shedding, adapting perfectly to harsh weather conditions. Now, speaking about the relationship between goats and humans. The story isn't so different from that of our beloved sheep. At first, they were just prey, wild animals we hunted to survive. But over time, something changed. At least 10,000 years ago, In a region we now know as Iran, humans began to domesticate goats. Genetic studies tell us that modern domestic goats descend directly from the Bezoar ibex, Capra aegagrus, a wild species native to that area. Since then, goats have been a vital resource for humanity. Nutritious meat, rich, versatile milk, and hides for warmth and for crafting objects, goats are, without a doubt, one of the most common types of livestock worldwide. Do you know why? Because they're inexpensive to buy and maintain. Plus, their reproductive cycle is fast, which means they can multiply and supply people quickly. They're tough animals, resilient to the harshest climates and the toughest conditions. In fact, today there are around 1 billion domestic goats on the planet, a true testament to their popularity and adaptability. But their importance goes far beyond food or the economy. Goats hold a deep place in human culture across the globe. From folk tales to religious teachings, rituals, and sacrifices, goats are everywhere. For example, in ancient Greece, the god Pan appears as a being half man, half goat, with horns, a beard, and goat's legs. These figures not only represent wild nature and fertility, but also reflect how humans have seen goats as symbols of strength, mystery, and a connection to the natural world. In many ancient tribes, goats weren't just useful animals. They were status symbols. They were used as a form of currency, or even as bridal dowry, passing from family to seal alliances and commitments. Today, goats are still present in culture, appearing on coats of arms, emblems, and symbols around the world. And in this digital age, they even have their own acronym. GOAT means greatest of all time, and it's used to praise standout people. Also, sheep have a shorter breeding cycle than goats. This makes many people think that raising sheep is more complicated than raising goats. Behavior-wise, goats are much more individualistic and curious. They often break away from the herd to explore and roam new areas, while sheep prefer to stick together, almost as if they're afraid to stray. Why? A big reason is their sense of smell. Male goats give off a very strong, pungent odor during the mating season, which they use to attract females. Rams also have a seductive scent, but it's much less intense than that of goats. This strong smell from male goats is part of their strategy to stand out and secure reproductive success, while sheep go for a more discreet, group-centered approach. Now that you've mastered the differences between sheep and goats, remember, not everything that looks the same really is. These animals show us how nature designs each creature with its own story and purpose. Can you imagine how many more secrets are hidden by the animals around us? Here at Wild Animal World, we'll keep exploring that incredible world together. If you want to keep discovering fascinating stories and little-known facts, subscribe and ring the bell. And don't forget to drop a comment with the fact that surprised you most, or any question you have. I'd love to read you. See you on the next adventure, because the wild world never stops amazing us.